They laughed when she walked on stage, but no one was ready for what happened next. The hall was already full when she arrived. Soft golden lights hung from the ceiling, reflecting gently off the polished wooden floor. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above rows of neatly arranged velvet seats. The air smelled faintly of perfume and polished wood. People spoke in low, confident voices, dressed in elegant suits and long evening gowns. She paused at the entrance. Her dress was simple, light blue, neatly pressed, but plain. She held a small music folder close to her chest as if it were something fragile. Her shoes were clean but slightly worn at the edges. For a moment, she felt like she had stepped into the wrong place. This was not just any event. It was one of the most respected piano gatherings in the city. Only the best performers were invited to play. Critics, teachers, and professional musicians filled the seats. Cameras stood quietly at the back, ready to capture the evening. And seated in the second row was a man many called a legend. He was known across the music world. His concerts sold out within minutes. His performances were described as flawless. His name alone carried weight. He leaned back comfortably in his chair, adjusting his cufflinks, scanning the stage with calm confidence. When she walked in, he noticed her immediately, not because she looked extraordinary, but because she didn't. He leaned slightly toward the man beside him and whispered something. A small smile formed on his lips. The man next to him gave a short, quiet laugh. She didn't hear the words, but she saw the smile. And somehow, she understood. Her fingers tightened around her folder. She had experienced that look before. The look that said, she doesn't belong here. The event host stepped onto the stage and announced the next performer for her. Her heart skipped. For a second, her feet refused to move. Then she took a slow breath. One step. Then another. The walk to the stage felt longer than it truly was. The sound of her heels lightly tapping against the wooden floor echoed louder in her ears than it should have. She could feel eyes following her, some curious, some doubtful, some already uninterested. The grand piano stood in the center of the stage. Black, shiny, perfectly still under the spotlight. It looked almost intimidating. She reached it and gently placed her folder on the music stand. From the second row, the famous pianist crossed his arms. His expression carried mild amusement, as if he expected something predictable. She adjusted the piano bench slightly. The small sound of wood shifting seemed too loud in the quiet hall. Her hands felt cold. She rubbed them softly against her dress. Her mind began whispering cruel thoughts. What if they're right? What if I embarrass myself? What if he don't deserve to be here? She remembered the small room where she practiced every day, the cracked paint on the walls, the old upright piano with one key, slightly out of tune, the evenings she spent playing while rain tapped against the window. No audience, no applause, just her and the music. She remembered the times she applied for music programs and never received replies. The competitions where she didn't win. The teacher who once told her she was too emotional in her playing. But music was the only place where she felt honest. It was the only language that understood her. She glanced at the audience. The lights made it hard to see clearly, but she could still make out shapes and faces. The famous pianist was visible under the glow of the chandelier light. He was watching her with polite but distant interest. Not cruel, just unconvinced. The host stepped off stage, leaving her alone in the silence. The room grew still, so still that she could hear someone cough softly in the back row. Her heartbeat felt loud inside her chest. She slowly sat down on the bench. The fabric of her dress moved gently as she adjusted herself. She placed both feet flat on the floor. Then she lifted her hands and hovered them above the keys. They trembled slightly. She quickly lowered them to her lap. Another whisper from the audience. Not loud, but enough. Her chest tightened. For a brief second, she considered standing up and apologizing, saying she wasn't feeling well, saying she would perform another time. It would be easier, safer. But then she thought about the nights she practiced until her fingers ached, the mornings she woke up early to rehearse before work, the sacrifices no one saw. If she walked away now, she would carry that regret forever. She took a deeper breath Inhale, exhale. The spotlight felt warmer now, almost comforting. She closed her eyes, not because she was afraid to look, but because she needed to remember why she was there. Not for the critics, not for the famous pianist, not even for the applause. She was there for the music. Her fingers slowly rose again. This time, they did not shake as much. They hovered gently over the black and white keys, like birds preparing to land. The room waited. The famous pianist leaned forward slightly, curious despite himself. A second passed. Then another. The silence stretched thin. And finally, her fingers pressed the first key. A soft note floated into the air. Clear, gentle, honest. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was steady. The sound traveled across the hall, touching the walls, rising toward the chandeliers. Her shoulders relaxed, just a little. She pressed another key, then another. The melody began forming, quiet but certain. Something in the atmosphere shifted. The whispers stopped. The famous pianist's small smile faded, not completely, but enough to show attention. She opened her eyes slowly, no longer looking at the audience, but at the piano itself. Her fingers began to move more freely now, as if they finally remembered their purpose. The hall remained silent, but this silence felt different. It was no longer judgment. It was listening, and as the melody continued to unfold, something inside her began to steady. She was no longer the girl who didn't belong. She was simply a musician telling her story, and the story had just begun. The melody continued, soft and steady. Her fingers moved slowly at first, pressing each key with care, as if every note carried something fragile inside it. The sound was gentle, almost like a quiet conversation. It filled the hall without force. The audience leaned in without realizing it. The famous pianist in the second row adjusted his posture. His arms, once crossed in quiet judgment, slowly relaxed. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in doubt now, but in focus. She played the next phrase, a little louder. The notes were still delicate, but there was something beneath them. Something deeper. It felt like a story unfolding in the dark, one small piece at a time. Her breathing steadied. Her back straightened. The trembling in her hands was gone. The melody began to grow. It was no longer fragile. It carried emotion. Now sadness first. A quiet, aching sadness that felt honest. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just real. Somewhere in the third row, a woman pressed her lips together and blinked slowly. The music shifted again. The lower keys joined in, adding warmth and weight. The sound became fuller, like waves rising in the ocean. Each note connected smoothly to the next. There were no sharp movements, no rush. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply telling the truth through sound. The famous pianist felt something unexpected in his chest. He had heard thousands of performances in his life. Technically, perfect ones. Loud, powerful ones. Fast, complicated ones. But this felt different. This wasn't showing skill. This was showing heart. On stage, she no longer saw the grand hall or the shining sun. She no longer felt the eyes watching her. She saw something else. She saw the small room where she practiced, the chipped paint on the wall, the evening light falling through a narrow window. She remembered playing alone, not for applause, but because music helped her breathe. The melody rose higher. It became stronger now. The sadness slowly turned into determination. The rhythm grew steady, confident. Her fingers moved faster, but not wildly. Each motion had purpose. The sound filled every corner of the hall. The audience was completely silent. Even the air felt still. The famous pianist leaned forward fully now, elbows resting on his knees. His face no longer carried amusement. It carried attention and something else. Respect. She reached a powerful section of the piece. Her hands moved across the keys with strength. The music swelled, deep and emotional. It sounded like struggle turning into hope. like someone standing back up after falling many times. Her face changed too. There was no fear there anymore. Only focus. Only feeling. A single tear slipped down the cheek of someone sitting near the aisle. They didn't even realize it until it reached their chin. The melody softened again, but this time it wasn't weak. It was peaceful. It felt like acceptance, like forgiveness. The famous pianist swallowed quietly. He remembered his own early years, the small competitions, the moments of doubt, the nights he questioned himself. Over time, success had made him confident. Maybe too confident. He had forgotten what raw honesty sounded like. And now, it was right in front of him. On stage, she approached the final part of her piece. Her fingers slowed. Each note lingered slightly longer. The hall felt suspended in time. No one shifted in their seats. No one checked their phones. No one whispered. The final melody line was simple. Not complex. Not flashy. Just beautiful. She pressed the second to last chord, holding it gently. The sound vibrated softly in the air. Then, with calm certainty, she played the final note. It echoed. Clear. Pure. And then silence. Complete silence. Her hands remained on the keys for a moment longer, her head slightly bowed, her chest rising and falling slowly. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. It felt endless. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single clap. Soft. Careful. Then, another. And another. Within moments, the entire hall rose to its feet. Applause filled the room, loud and overwhelming. Not polite applause. Real applause, the kind that comes from being moved. She lifted her hands from the keys slowly and stood up. She turned toward the audience. Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected this. The famous pianist was standing too, not slowly, not reluctantly. He stood straight, clapping with steady hands. His face held no pride, now only humility. Their eyes met for a brief moment. He gave her a small nod. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't exaggerated, but it was sincere. She placed one hand gently over her heart and bowed. The applause continued. Some people wiped their eyes openly now. Others smiled through tears. She didn't feel taller. She didn't feel superior. She felt calm because she had not played to prove anyone wrong. She had played to stay true to herself, and somehow that had been enough. As the applause slowly faded, she stepped away from the piano. The grand instrument that once felt intimidating now felt like an old friend. The stage lights still shone brightly above her, but they no longer felt harsh, they felt warm. The famous pianist sat down again, but his expression remained thoughtful. He wasn't thinking about technique or speed. He was thinking about something far more important. He was thinking about how easy it is to judge someone before hearing their story, and how powerful it is when someone answers doubt with grace instead of anger. She walked off stage quietly, holding her folder once again, but this time her hands were steady. Backstage, she paused near a mirror. For a second, she simply looked at herself. The same simple blue dress, the same worn shoes. Nothing had changed on the outside. But inside, something was different. She had faced the room that doubted her, and instead of shrinking, she had played. Sometimes, the loudest response is not words. It is courage. Out in the hall, conversations buzzed with excitement now. People spoke about the emotion of the piece, the honesty, the unexpected beauty. The famous pianist remained seated for a while longer, staring at the empty stage. A quiet realization settled in his heart. Talent can impress, but sincerity can transform. That night, no one remembered what she wore. No one remembered how nervous she looked when she walked in. They remembered how she made them feel. And that is something far more powerful than perfection. As she stepped outside the building, the night air felt cool against her skin. The sky was dark, dotted with soft stars. Streetlights glowed gently along the quiet road. She took a deep breath. For the first time that evening, she smiled freely. Not because she had silenced laughter, but because she had found her voice. And sometimes, that is all it takes. If this story touched your heart, let it remind you of something simple. Never let someone else's doubt become your silence. Sometimes, the world laughs first. But if you stay true to your song, it will listen in the end.